History remembers her as the Virgin Queen, the monarch who shaped an age, but behind the glittering myth of Elizabeth, lies a childhood that was anything but golden. Hers was a childhood haunted by shadows, shadows of blood, betrayal, and the constant threat of death. From her first breath, she was a pawn in a dangerous game. And from her earliest memories, she lived in a world where the past never stopped whispering. Elizabeth was born in September 1533, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. She should have been a triumph, the living symbol of her father's break with Rome. But her arrival brought disappointment. She was not the son Henry craved. The court greeted her birth with forced smiles, and Anne's enemies whispered that her survival depended entirely on producing a brother soon after. From the very beginning, Elizabeth's worth was measured not by who she was, but by what she was not. At 2 years old, her world shattered. In May 1536, Anne Boleyn was accused of adultery, incest, and treason, condemned in a trial that was as much theater as justice. Elizabeth was too young to understand, yet the echo of her mother's fall reverberated through the rest of her life. One day, she was the king's legitimate heir, daughter of a queen. The next, she was declared a bastard, her mother executed by a swordsman's stroke on Tower Green. Though Elizabeth could not witness the moment, it haunted her childhood through whispers and cruel reminders. The ghost of Anne Boleyn would follow her forever. After Anne's death, Elizabeth's status collapsed. The royal nursery emptied. Her servants were dismissed. She was moved from household to household, sometimes treated with courtesy, sometimes as little more than an unwanted ward. Every relocation reminded her that she no longer belonged anywhere. Unlike her half-sister Mary, who was older and remembered her own fall from favor, Elizabeth absorbed instability as the very texture of childhood. Nothing was certain. No one was trustworthy. The Tudor court was a place of rumor and danger, and Elizabeth, even as a child, lived under suspicion. Stories of poison drifted through the corridors. Cups were tasted before she drank. Food was tested before she ate. She grew up watching every gesture for signs of threat. The nursery, a place that should have been safe, became instead a chamber of constant fear. Night after night, she went to sleep with tales of assassins and traitors echoing around her. She learned early to mask her emotions, to play a part even as a child. For in a court where words could condemn, silence was survival. As she grew older, the weight of her mother's execution pressed harder. Children at court whispered, calling her the whore's daughter. Adults treated her with a politeness edged with scorn. Anne's enemies never let Elizabeth forget the axe that fell on Tower Green. Some even believed the sins of the mother stained the daughter. For Elizabeth, every mirror reflected not just her face, but her mother's death. Her father, Henry VIII, remarried again and again, and with each marriage, Elizabeth's position shifted like sand. Jane Seymour gave him the son he craved, Edward, and Elizabeth was pushed further from the line of succession. Later queens, from Anne of Cleves to Catherine Parr, offered her moments of stability, but never permanence. Elizabeth learned that affection was temporary, that security was fragile. She carried herself with composure beyond her years, because she knew childish dependence could be dangerous. In Catherine Parr's household, Elizabeth found both opportunity and peril. Catherine encouraged her education, surrounding her with tutors who trained her in languages, philosophy, and theology. Elizabeth blossomed intellectually, showing a precocious intelligence that impressed everyone. Yet her brilliance drew attention, and attention in Tudor England was rarely safe. It was during these years that the most haunting scandal of her youth unfolded, the Thomas Seymour affair. Thomas Seymour, Catherine Parr's new husband, was handsome, ambitious, and dangerously reckless. He began visiting Elizabeth's chambers in the mornings, engaging in flirtations and behavior that blurred the line between teasing and predation. Elizabeth, still in her early teens, found herself at the center of a storm she could neither understand nor control. Servants whispered of his intrusions. Catherine herself sometimes joined in these encounters. But the tension was unmistakable. The scandal grew until it could no longer be ignored, and Elizabeth was sent away in disgrace. Though she was innocent, the incident left scars. It taught her how vulnerable she truly was, how easily a man's desire or a court's suspicion could ruin her. From that moment forward, Elizabeth guarded her reputation with iron determination. Her vow of chastity in later years was not born only of political calculation, but of childhood trauma. The haunted quality of Elizabeth's youth deepened after Henry VIII's death. Power shifted violently in England. Edward VI, her half-brother, inherited the throne as a child, leaving factions to tear at each other for control. Elizabeth, still a teenager, lived under constant watch, her every move judged for signs of ambition. She was invited to court and then dismissed. She was praised as learned and virtuous, then whispered about as a threat. Every gift she received, every letter she wrote, could be twisted into evidence of treason. The most terrifying years came under her half-sister, Mary. Mary, once Elizabeth's ally in misfortune, turned on her with suspicion and fury. As Mary's reign grew bloodier, Elizabeth became the focus of conspiracies she had not joined. When rebellion erupted in Wyatt's rebellion, Elizabeth was accused of complicity. Dragged to the Tower of London, she was lodged in the very fortress where her mother had met her death. The echo was unmistakable. The daughter of Anne Boleyn walking the same stone paths, hearing the same ravens, sleeping beneath the same cold ceilings. She wrote to Mary, protesting her innocence, but she knew her life hung by a thread. Each day in the tower could have been her last. Every sound of footsteps outside her door could have been the guards coming to take her to the block. Though she survived, the experience etched terror into her soul. She left the tower alive, but not unscarred. For the rest of her life, Elizabeth carried the memory of those weeks, the weight of chains she narrowly escaped, the haunting image of her mother's ghost, the knowledge that a single whisper could kill her. Elizabeth's childhood, then, was not a prelude to glory, but a battlefield of shadows. She grew up in a world where love could vanish overnight, where trust was betrayal waiting to happen, where survival meant masking every thought. She became skilled at silence, at calculation, at wearing a mask so convincing it became her shield. The Virgin Queen was not born of myth, but forged in trauma. What haunted her most was not only the fear of death, but the loneliness. She was always a daughter without a mother, a sister without allies, a child without a home. Her letters from youth reveal a hunger for affection, a longing to be safe, to be seen not as a threat, but as a person. That hunger never left her. Even as queen, she surrounded herself with courtiers, yet kept them at arm's length. Unable to trust, unwilling to risk intimacy, the haunted child became a haunted woman. Her reign was magnificent, her legend enduring. But at its heart was the ghost of a little girl standing in a cold chamber, listening to whispers of her mother's death. Elizabeth Tudor survived, but she never escaped. Her childhood was a prison without walls, a shadow that followed her until the end. And so, when we think of Elizabeth as the Virgin Queen, we must remember the haunted child behind the crown, the girl who grew up beneath the axe's shadow, who learned to live with ghosts, and who carried sorrow like a hidden crown no one else could see.